It was at this point that Mutant Cowboy had learned the error of his Division 2 ways. Seeing one of his best builds simply outlasted by an imposter humbled him to his very core.
What's going on, everyone? Here I am back in Countdown because of course I need to farm more pieces of gear for a build that I am currently testing out. And unfortunately it is a long grind because the game never wants to give me the rolls that I'm actually looking for. So yeah, I still need to do a little bit of farming to kind of get some perfect rolls. But as of now, I do thankfully have enough pieces that I can actually do some competent testing with what I want to get done. Now, before I go over any of that stuff specifically, I do want to talk about one thing that might help some of you out in case, you're not really going that far in the current league activity. I think it expires either like tonight or tomorrow morning. I don't exactly know. I think it's like, maybe a day left or so. But anyway, one of the activities that was kind of annoying for me was getting the shade kills. It's not really that big of a deal, but if you don't really use skill builds as often, or you've kind of, just kind of switched to more DPS builds, whatever, maybe it's a little bit annoying for you. But what I basically found is that in the range, apparently if you're just, hitting those targets with a skill, it's going to count as shade kills for your league activities. So you could probably in like 15 or 20 minutes get 500 kills and completely max out those league activities there, which again, not something that's hugely important, but if you're kind of scrounging for time and you need to get those last ones in, yeah, this might be a good way for you to do it. Now, like I was saying, I am back here in Countdown because, again, I needed to farm some very specific pieces as fast as I could to do some testing on a specific thing that I was kind of told about in the comment section of one of my previous videos. So this comment is from Billy Bruticus, and he said that he noticed a weird interaction. He was using the Ninjabike and 3 ongoing directives, and basically what he said was that his assault turret was doing more damage per bullet when he had the actual bleed bullets on, so those hollow point bullets in the range, and I guess he was also testing it in the open world. Now, obviously anybody who's familiar with the Division knows that trying to keep track of anything in this game, whether it's working as intended, a glitch, a bug, I mean, the list of problems that can occur in this game, I mean, it can be a bit much. Even for me, who's constantly testing things, constantly checking out stuff, look, there's just so much stuff to try to keep track of. Based on the descriptions of certain talents and abilities, you may get one assumption of how it's supposed to work, and then you test it out, and it's completely different. And of course, there's also just the amount of things that the developers change, or rework, or buff, or nerf. It can be mind-boggling. And honestly, I kind of remember something about Ongoing Directive and the hollow point bullets a long time ago, possibly glitching or buffing skills in a way that wasn't intended. So that's kind of what I wanted to actually take a look at in this video. Now, for comparison purposes, this is pretty much my, I would call it the big boy skill build, at least, my turret and drone build that probably puts out the best damage of really any build that I used. Now, of course, depending on the talents or whatnot, if you had perfect glass cannon or you use the combined arms, yeah, I mean, you can get more damage. You can. But overall, I think this is, good enough for, I guess, not being extremely super squishy and not having to constantly, shoot the weapon just to get, your skills to actually do damage. I mean, I like combined arms, but on a full glass cannon skill build, yeah, it's something that's a little bit risky, especially when you're trying to build up all of those stacks with the capacitor. Yeah, managing to get 40 stacks all the time, on heroic difficulty with 4 people or legendary, I mean, it can be a bit rough and it can be a bit dangerous. But I'm always looking for, other interesting options for that. But anyway, yeah, so that's basically one of the best, highest damage skill builds for turret and drone in the game. Now, honestly, while this build isn't what I would call fully optimized, some of my skill damage rolls and, skill haste rolls are a bit lacking. Overall, the build performs incredibly well. Now, of course, because of waveform, you do get that, I guess, switching buff. So, you get damage on one skill, then it switches to another skill, switches to the other skill, constantly keeps switching back and forth. When it's at peak, when it's at, max efficiency for any one skill, this build, I'm basically getting my turret to hit for 272k. And I'm getting my drone at max waveform basically to hit for 170k. That's really great. But of course, that comes with a downside. When it's not active, I'm hitting for 236 on the turret and 130 on the drone. And this basically gives me an average of 254k on the turret and 150k on the drone. Still not bad. That's pretty good, pretty stable, pretty high damage for a turret drone combo. But of course, since we are doing comparisons and I like to actually, show up the different points of a build, I did switch to my Future Initiative build as well. And this is obviously Future Initiative rolled with, skill damage and all that stuff. And honestly, as I expected, this is still a pretty good build. Of course, it's, a little tricky to use Future Initiative without healing, and, that can be a problem. But it's just for demonstration purposes. That's it. But with this build, I am hitting for 257k on the turret and 160k on the drone. And this is better than the average of the waveform build. And that's because obviously, as long as I'm at full health, I'm constantly getting that 15% total skill damage and stuff like that on my actual skills. So I don't have to, worry about them switching back and forth. And while it may be less peak damage on each skill, overall, the average damage is better than the waveform version. And that, of course, leads us into what I want to test out today. And that is a 5-piece ongoing directive. No, I'm just joking. I do have 5 pieces on there just because I was trying to keep track of which pieces I need to basically get a better skill damage roll on. And so, yeah, I would actually put the Wyvern on there for the damage purposes of actually using this build. Anyway, so yes, unfortunately, I couldn't get one roll with skill damage on it. I could not find gloves with skill damage. I don't know why. I went through like 40 levels of countdown and still couldn't get it. Other than just make sure you actually change your stat there to skill damage on your specialization tree. That's obviously important to get the most damage out of the build, because normally I have it on healing, because usually I run more healing builds than I do skill builds. But anyway, the point of Ongoing Directive is basically when you apply a status effect and then you shoot them, you apply a mark to them, and then once they die, you end up getting those hollow point bullets on your magazine, and you also get, I guess now they've added the feature that you also give additional hollow point bullets to your allies, so they get half a magazine of hollow point bullets. I mean, it's not the greatest buff, but it's still a decent buff to get. But what this does is it gives you like 20% amplified weapon damage to your weapon when you have these bleed bullets on there. And that's great. So, I'm pairing it with tech support, pairing it with glass cannon. Empress International is probably not the greatest piece to have there, but that's basically the one that I'm using because that's the one that I got. So that's what I'm going with. That gives me the 25% total weapon damage, and of course the glass cannon ends up giving me the 25% amplified damage. Now, obviously, of course, you could try whatever else. Memento backpack, if you're like a solo player, would be great because you get that armor regen. You don't have to worry about being as squishy from glass cannon. I mean, within reason. Obviously, like a big explosion is still gonna probably drop you. Doesn't really matter too much that you have like one armor core on there. But anyway, the point is, there's other options. I'm just using these ones for testing purposes alone. But obviously, again, turret and drone combo with a capacitor with all these talents on it to give me a good amount of damage. Now, since I am dealing status effects, yes, you could use shock and awe for that 20% total skill damage. But again, I'm trying to go for a little bit stronger and a little bit more self-sustained. So, when my skills get a kill, which is the main damage source of the build, they're going to end up buffing themselves. So it kind of makes it a little bit easier not to have to worry about constantly applying the status effect, even though you technically are. But anyway, I digress. Now, to get to the point here, the basic concept of this build is the exact same as those other two builds. I mean, it's basically the same version of, the Future Initiative or the same version of the waveform. All right, it's just slightly different pieces. However, what I was getting for damage on the turret with this Ongoing Directive skill build was 268k. And what I was getting for the drone was 167k. Now again, if I used combined arms and perfect glass cannon rolled for skill damage, yeah, I would be getting more damage than this. But of course, again, a little bit too squishy and a little bit too much shooting for a very squishy build. These numbers, 268 and 167, are only slightly lower than the max of waveform. So 272 and 170. Now, of course, like I said, since those waveform stacks constantly switch off, you're not actually getting those values. So really, in overall damage, you're getting 254 and 150, again, compared to Ongoing Directive, which is always going to be 268 and 167. So what this means is that, yes, waveform may have a higher, damage potential, being able to put, 272K from a turret on, your thumbnail on YouTube looks great, and then you can put 170 for the drone. It looks great. But in reality, that's not the damage that you're always getting from those two skills. Ongoing Directive is going to be providing more damage. Again, I don't know if this is a glitch or a bug or something that's working not as intended, but that's what I found. I tried testing this out with other skills just to see, what kind of results I could get. And honestly, there really wasn't any difference in those skills. This appears to only work with the turret and drone. It wasn't working with the explosive skills. It wasn't working with the sniper turret, which I do find a little bit odd. Basically, yeah, my waveform build was still hitting for more damage on those skills. Now, of course, I will admit that I didn't test every single combination fully. I did not, use like the Stinger High or something like that. So maybe there's another skill in there that kind of slipped through the cracks that might actually be buffed by these hollow point bullets. But anyway, I did take the time to, do some more build spying. I used the inspection while I was basically going through a bunch of these countdown missions, and I did, get a bunch of other builds to kind of review and go over and talk about, and hopefully, you guys can take some knowledge from those. And so hopefully I'll get that video out in the next couple days, because I know a bunch of you seem to actually enjoy that, seem to take some information from that, and maybe it helped out some of you, maybe it didn't. It all depends. But yeah, I'll go through these builds, here in the future. But anyway, guys, yeah, test this stuff out with Ongoing Directive, see if there's a combination that you like. I don't know how long this will last. I mean, if this becomes a huge thing for the developers that are like, this is not supposed to be, it's probably going to get the nerf hammer, or I guess the debuff, or whatever you want to call it. I would assume that it's going to be fixed if the developers have the time to do so. But in the meantime, this could be something good for you guys to play around with. And honestly, anything that kind of gets you out there farming for something new and different, and gives you basically a new challenge to basically work towards. And it always just kind of provides new life to the game, and that's really what we're all interested in, just kind of keeping the game alive and keeping ourselves motivated to do something in the game. But anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.